Cottage Homestead. Today is day 2 of our processing and butchering of the pig, and this is a big pot full of lard. Halfway down we still have one more pot just like this to go. So the easiest way to do lard that we have found is to cut it up into smaller pieces so that it will go through your grinder, and when you grind it down first and then put it all in the pot and heat it up, you have less waste that way, and it just makes the process run smoother. And this was the lard that we ran through the grinder so that we could now render it in the pot. And I'll show you different bits and pieces. It's not going to be a complete video on all the steps, but I'll show you some of the steps as we go through it. So we have one Dutch oven here going, a Magnolite heavy duty pot with lard in it. It's already been through the grinder. And then in this pot, the lard is in the grinder and it's already starting the process of cooking down the lard so that we can have enough lard for probably over a year with just the 3 of us here on the homestead. And what we're going to be doing with this lard is canning it so that it is shelf stable. And that's what we're doing today, is rendering the lard. And hopefully before the day is over, we'll get to putting some pork and some seasoning and some casing to make sausage. And then we have a few more things to do with some of the other cuts of pork, such as cutting into pork chops and roast, stuff like that. So just want to give y'all a quick little video on what we're doing and how we are rendering our lard. It ended up being close to 5 gallons. It was our best guess, best estimate. And of course it wasn't perfect. I'm sure there was some that we were not able to get, just merely for the fact that we were extremely exhausted from the whole process of butchering. Age is definitely a factor, along with some health problems. It has definitely taken us much longer to go through this process, to where there was a time we could have probably got it all done in one day. But that's not exactly how it's going this time. So I'll bring y'all back in a few minutes and show you some more. So this pot in the back is a little further behind the pot in the front. I'm going to show you the difference. It still looks more of a creamy and a white. And this one here is already getting very close to being finished. And all of this would be the fat that was in the lard, or in the fat, that is going to be just cooked out. If there's any impurities in the lard, and you can see on the edge here, hopefully, that it's looking a little more golden, and it's separating the lard from any impurities, which would be any of the fat that might be just a different kind of fat, not necessarily the lard part of it. And those of you that made this before, you would understand what I'm talking about, because sometimes there is what's called cracklings that's left, and if you keep going with this and keep cooking it, then this would become cracklings. But since it was grinded first, it would just be like little bits of crackling instead of little chunks of crackling. But by grinding it first, it just makes it like melt the fat faster. So it kind of speeds up the process, but don't be deceived. It still takes a very long time to render lard. So I'll bring y'all back when I come to the next step before I strain this and put it into the jars. So this was the pot in the back. Now you can see where the, I'm getting confused on the name. The crackling part of it, there is another name that people call it besides crackling, but here in the South we call it crackling. Start sinking to the bottom. And now this one here was the first one, and it's, of course there's a glare. It's already finished, and the burner is still on, but it kind of quit simmering, so I cut it off. And that's how you know it's done. And all the impurities, or as we know in the South, cracklings, fall to the bottom. And if it would have been just chunks of pork in here, the lard, then it would have had like pork rinds or more of what you would think of as cracklings. But since it was ground, it's just little fine pieces of it. So this lard here is ready to be put in jars. And this one here is a little bit lighter in color, and it's getting very close. And that's the trick here, is you don't want to let it overcook and get too dark. It's still good to use, but it'll have more of a pork flavor, like a bacon flavor. And you don't want that when you're using it for baking things. Now, using it in vegetables and stuff, this is still considered pretty light. But some people overdo it and it becomes more of a brown, and you don't want it to get any darker than this. And after it sets up, it should look like a cream color or a white color once it gets back to a solid form in your canning jars. So this was our last batch of rendering the lard. So what we're doing is putting it in clean jars that have been heated in the oven, and there will not be any water bathing or pressure canning after this point. All we're going to do is wipe the rims with vinegar on a paper towel, and then dry it off with a dry paper towel, and then put the lid and the ring on it, and it will seal all by itself. And that is all there is to that, and it will be finished. And leave about a ½ inch or so of headspace, just so when it cools off it may expand a little bit, so that you have enough room in there. And then it should be shelf stable for about 2 years after that. So this was our last batch. We ended up having about 5 of those Magnolite pots. It's like the Dutch oven size. I think it's maybe a, I don't know, 6-quart or so, but we had 5 of those full. And I'm guessing this will make about 6 more pints. Now some people do put it in pints, but in quarts, but I went with the pints because I really don't feel like we're going to use it that fast. So all we have left to do is finish filling up a few more of the jars, and we'll be done rendering the lard. And it should be shelf stable for about 2 years. And I'll probably let y'all see some of the steps later on in the week or next week on how we do the sausage and stuffing it into casing. So that's all for the rendering the lard. It's been a very long day. I think this last pot was about 8 hours after we first started. So we are definitely tired and ready for this little project to be over with. So farewell, Homestead family, friends, and neighbors from the Cozy Cottage Homestead. So I did want to show y'all how many jars of the lard we got, and this is the wide mouth pints. So you can see these were done earlier, I guess you could say. And then getting down to the end, it's starting to get a little bit lighter. And then these were the ones that we just finished. So we ended up with 25. I'll go across all of them. 25 wide mouth pints. And you can see kind of in the cracks there the different stages. Well, now you can kind of see Over here, they're already getting more solid. And as we go back this way, you can see where they're just getting finished and they're a nice golden color, which is what you want. And then when they get cooled off, they should be almost like a white, kind of like an off-white. So that's what all of our hard work and labor did, was 25 wide mouth pints. And we do have a little left over that we're just going to set out on the counter, but these here are shelf stable. Most all of them, you can see some of these, all of these have already sealed. And then the ones on the end, of course, as they cool off, then they will seal as well.